Hey everybody, and congratulations Indianapolis. You continue to raise the bar for this league. We continue to get sponsors, viewers, fans like you, and we are so grateful for you to continue to elevate these women who deserve it. Now to present the...
Something strange was in the air on July 19, and fans across the country felt it before tip-off even began. The buzz wasn't just about another WNBA game, it was the sudden, unexplained absence of Caitlin Clark that sent shockwaves through the league. No press release, no sideline footage, just whispers. And a cold, unsettling silence. Where was she? Why now? Speculation exploded. Was it a hidden injury? Team drama? Or something deeper that no one saw coming? And as Indiana Fever walked onto the court without their superstar, the energy shifted instantly. Connecticut Sun didn't just take advantage, they unleashed chaos. Plays were sharper, aggression was dialed to a 10, and for every point scored, it felt like a message was being sent. We don't care who you are, we came to dominate. Fans were left stunned. Some were in disbelief. Others claimed it was a statement game aimed right at Caitlin. But the real question still lingered. Was this just a bad night for Indiana, or the beginning of a bigger storm behind closed doors? Because if what insiders are whispering turns out to be true, this is just the tip of the drama iceberg. Buckle up, because this isn't your regular post-game recap. This is war. The tension was already sizzling before tip-off, but the second it was confirmed that Caitlin Clark wouldn't be stepping onto the court, everything flipped upside down. Fans weren't just surprised, they were stunned, confused, and, in some corners, downright furious. The announcement came minutes before warm-ups. No warning, no pregame interviews, just a quiet update from the Fever's media team. Caitlin is out tonight due to a precautionary hamstring evaluation. It read, that was it. No further details. No visible sign of injury, no limp. No medical boot, nothing. Just absence. The cameras immediately swiveled to the Fever bench. Caitlin sat there in warm-ups, arms folded, her face unreadable. Next to her assistant coach, Jessica Davenport looked tense, whispering something into Clark's ear. The two shared a quick glance before turning back to the court. It was a blinked and dumb sit moment, but enough to set social media ablaze. Was she being benched? Was there a disagreement behind closed doors? Or was this a carefully timed rest day to avoid a heated clash with the Sun? Connecticut fans didn't waste time celebrating. Their cheers weren't just for their own team, they were loud, pointed, and sarcastic. Where's Clark? One section chanted, signs in the crowd read, ducking the Sun, and we wanted the smoke. The energy was borderline hostile. Didn't feel like a normal game anymore. It felt personal. Aaliyah Boston, visibly shaken during warm-ups, tried to focus. She had to be the anchor now. With Clark out, the entire offensive game plan fell on her shoulders. She huddled with Mitchell and Cunningham at center court before tip-off. Mouths moved quickly. Heads nodded. And then it began. But from the first possession, it was clear Indiana was off rhythm. There, spacing felt clumsy, the passes were late, and every move felt just a second too slow. Connecticut smelled blood. Tina Charles came out blazing, dominating the paint and throwing elbows that went unnoticed by the officials. On the sidelines, head coach Stephanie White clapped with an intensity that bordered on frantic. She knew this was their chance to prove something, not just to Indiana, but to the whole league. Sun players took every opportunity to show that they weren't intimidated by the Fever's hype. At one point in the first quarter, DeWanna Carrington stared down Cunningham after draining a corner three and mouthed something the cameras didn't catch. But the reaction on the Fever bench told the whole story. Cunningham turned red and barked back. Boston stepped in, waving her arms to cool the moment, but it was obvious the game had become personal, heated, and emotionally volatile. Midway through the second quarter, the game reached a boiling point. Indiana's Kelsey Mitchell drove hard to the basket, was met midair by Nelson Adota, and landed hard on her back. The whistle never came. Fans gasped. Mitchell lay on the floor for a beat longer than usual. When she finally stood up, she didn't look at the refs. She looked straight at the Fever bench, specifically at Clark. It was a chilling stare, quiet, lingering, and full of something more than frustration. Almost like she was asking, "Why aren't you out here?" The camera cut to Caitlin again. She still hadn't moved. Same posture, same expressionless face. That was when the broadcast commentators started connecting dots. Rumors that had floated all season about chemistry issues, unspoken rifts, and locker room tension suddenly didn't feel so crazy. Was Clark's injury really that serious? Or was it a smokescreen for something deeper? And then came the third quarter. The quarter where everything unraveled. Connecticut came out of halftime like they had been waiting for this game all year. They pressed high. They trapped Mitchell and Cunningham. They doubled Boston every time she touched the ball. And when they stole a sloppy pass early in the third and converted it into a fast break three, the Sun bench exploded. Screams, stomps, and chest bumps. The kind you only see in playoff basketball. And this wasn't the playoffs. This was July. The Fever had no answers. Their offense turned into desperation. Long threes with no rebounders. Cross-court passes that floated just a little too long. And on every possession, the pressure mounted. The crowd was no longer split. They were overwhelmingly behind Connecticut now. Even some Fever fans began to grow silent. You could feel the confidence melting away with every missed shot. Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening on the Fever bench. Not with Caitlin, but with her teammates. Cunningham and Hall were caught whispering intensely, glancing at Clark in between comments. At one point, Hall seemed to shake her head and mutter something under her breath. Whatever it was, it didn't look supportive. The chemistry, or the illusion of it, was cracking, and the Sun weren't letting up. Tina Charles continued, her dominance inside. Every bucket was like a dagger. Every celebration felt louder, more pointed. Carrington had 17 by the start of the fourth, and it looked like she was ready to go for more. She walked past Clark at the end of the third quarter and gave her a smirk that could cut glass. Again, no reaction from Clark. She just stared straight ahead, stone-faced. But the boiling point came with 9 minutes left in the game. Boston, frustrated and exhausted, tried to draw contact in the post. She spun, elevated, and was hammered mid-air. This time the whistle blew, but the damage was done. She hit the ground hard and stayed down. Fever staff rushed to her. The arena held its breath on the bench. Clark finally stood up, just for a second. She took one step forward, like she might run onto the court. But then she stopped herself. A trainer waved her back, and she sat down. That moment, caught on camera, was instantly clipped and shared online. Some praised her for showing restraint. Others accused her of detachment. Fans argued in the comments. Why didn't she help? Was she even going to? Is she really injured? Suddenly, the injury narrative was falling apart. And so was the game. Indiana, down double digits, looked defeated. Passes stopped coming. Movement off the ball disappeared. Mitchell's eyes darted constantly to the bench. And then, during a timeout, it happened. Cunningham refused to sit next to Clark. She stood, towel around her neck, arms crossed, glaring at the jumbotron. The distance between the two wasn't just physical. It was symbolic. The Fever's unity had cracked wide open. And everyone watching knew it. July 19 fireworks. Caitlin Clark's sidelines sparked Connecticut Sun's explosive win. As the fourth quarter got underway, the Fever were hanging on by a thread. The scoreboard didn't just reflect points, it reflected pressure. The Connecticut Sun weren't just scoring. They were dominating with a ruthless confidence that screamed, "We don't fear the hype." Every time Indiana tried to mount a response, Connecticut answered louder, faster, and sharper. The rhythm of the game belonged to the Sun now. And they were dancing all over the Fever's mistakes. But something was shifting off the court too. Cameras zoomed in on Caitlin Clark again, who now had her arms folded tightly across her chest. She wasn't watching the action anymore. Her eyes were locked on her own teammates. Her jaw clenched, her foot tapped. And for the first time, viewers at home began to wonder aloud, was she angry, frustrated, or guilty? Meanwhile, rumors were circulating faster than the ball on the court. Tweets, Instagram stories, and private accounts began posting cryptic messages. One insider claimed that Clark had requested to sit this game out due to a disagreement with coaching staff. Another said it was a precaution after she allegedly skipped a team meeting the night before. Nothing confirmed, but the noise was deafening. And then it got louder. With 6 minutes left in the game, Alyssa Boston was seen on the bench with an ice pack wrapped around her right shoulder. She'd been carrying the team all night, scoring, defending, even calling out plays, but the exhaustion was visible now. She leaned back in her seat, took a deep breath, and whispered something to a staff member. No one could hear what she said, but the moment didn't go unnoticed. Twitter immediately exploded. Is Boston hurt too? Is Clark going to have to sub in? Will she? But Caitlin stayed seated. The frustration on the Fever bench reached a boiling point when Mitchell, after being subbed out, threw her towel to the ground and muttered something under her breath. The sideline mic barely picked it up, but some fans swore she said, "This is a joke." Others thought she said, "I'm not doing this without her." Whatever the truth, the tension couldn't be ignored anymore. And then came the moment that would define the night. During a timeout with 4 minutes and 32 seconds left, Stephanie White, head coach of the Sun, walked over to one of her players, covered her mic, and said something into her ear. The player smiled, nodded, and walked back onto the court. What followed wasn't just basketball, it was a message. Connecticut called an ISO play for Tina Charles. She backed down her defender, spun left, and scored with a soft hook. She jogged back down the court, staring straight at the Fever bench. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to dot. A minute later, Carrington hit another three. This time, she turned to the Fever sideline, pointed at her wrist like Damian Lillard, and mouthed, "It's time." The crowd went wild. Even fans in neutral colors stood and clapped. The atmosphere had shifted from competition to spectacle. But what happened next sent the internet into meltdown as the Fever tried to regroup. Assistant coach Jessica Davenport walked over to Caitlin and said something quietly. Caitlin didn't respond. Davenport repeated herself. Clark turned to her, raised her eyebrows, and shook her head. Live on camera. Everyone saw it. The debate was immediate. Was Clark refusing to enter the game? Was she being asked to suit up? Or was it something more subtle, like checking in emotionally, not physically? Whatever it was, the timing couldn't have been worse. Connecticut had just gone up by 14. The Fever were collapsing. And their star player was seemingly refusing to rejoin the fight. On the court, Mitchell and Cunningham tried to force anything to stop the bleeding. But every shot felt rushed. Every drive led to contact without whistles. And every missed bucket brought more exasperation. Mitchell clapped her hands, looked at the officials, and even shouted at one point, "Where's the call?" But it didn't matter. The game had slipped away. On the broadcast, the commentators had no choice but to go there. "We've seen emotional nights before," one of them said, "but this feels different. It feels like something is breaking inside that locker room." The cameras cut to Clark again. This time, she wasn't stone-faced. She was red, her jaw tight, her eyes locked on the floor. Some viewers claimed she was tearing up. Others said she was just angry. Whatever the emotion, it was clear. This wasn't just a game loss. This was something deeper. With 2 minutes left, Connecticut sealed the deal with another dagger three. From Bonner, the crowd erupted. The Sun bench cleared, dancing and shouting. The Fever bench remained silent. Boston sat with her ice pack. Mitchell leaned forward with her head in her hands, and Cunningham stood with her arms crossed, eyes closed, and Clark. She stood up, slowly, but not to cheer, not to rally. She picked up her warm-up jacket, turned to the tunnel, and walked out. With over a minute still left on the clock. No explanation. No goodbye. No support for her teammates. Just a silent exit from a night that had already spiraled into chaos. Back in the arena, some fans booed. Others just gasped. Even the Sun players paused. It was surreal. Felt like something you see in movies, not in real life. But it was happening. And it was being broadcast live across the country. After the game, the Fever skipped the usual on-court interviews. Only a team spokesperson addressed the media. We will provide updates on player health and availability later this week, they said. Nothing more, no answers, just questions. And as the arena slowly emptied, fans kept refreshing their feeds, waiting for Clark's statement. Her explanation, her reason, but she didn't post, didn't tweet, didn't like a single comment. The silence said everything. Because this wasn't just about an injury. This was about trust. It's about leadership. About whether the face of the franchise had just turned her back when her team needed her most. And in the background, as cameras showed the Fever heading to the locker room, someone whispered just loud enough for a courtside mic to catch. This isn't over? As the Fever headed back to the locker room, the silence was deafening. No words were exchanged, no high fives, no nods of solidarity. It's just the sound of squeaking sneakers, heavy breaths, and the occasional clank of a water bottle hitting the bench. The game was over, but the real battle was just beginning. Behind closed doors, emotions that had simmered all night were about to boil over. Inside the locker room, tension crackled like static in the air. Alyssa Boston, still clutching her shoulder, sat against the wall, staring at the floor. Mitchell paced, her jaw tight, muttering under her breath. Cunningham tried to speak first, her voice low but sharp. We were out there giving everything, she said, and some people, they chose to walk away. The room fell quiet. A few players looked toward the empty seat where Caitlin usually sat. It was still vacant. Her absence wasn't just physical, it was personal now. The kind that cuts deeper than any scoreboard loss. Someone finally said it out loud. This team feels broken. Meanwhile, the Connecticut Sun locker room was a completely different universe. Laughter echoed off the walls. Music blasted from a Bluetooth speaker. Tina Charles danced, Bonner joked, and Stephanie White gave each of her players a firm, proud pat on the back. That's how we do it, she said. That's how we shut out the noise. But even amidst the celebration, they were watching their phones. Screenshots of Clark's walkout were already going viral. Someone showed Carrington a post that read, "Clark leaves her team in flames." Carrington raised her eyebrows and said they needed her, and she dipped. Wild. Back in Indiana, things only got worse about an hour after the game ended. A story broke from a sports blog known for leaking behind-the-scenes locker room drama. It claimed that Clark had confronted the coaching staff earlier in the week about overuse and was advised to sit out to preserve her health. But sources in the same report said Clark did not like how her concerns were handled and felt left out of decisions regarding her own role. The article also suggested that her relationship with some teammates, especially Mitchell, had become strained. One anonymous quote said, "It's like two teams in one locker room, the Clark group and everybody else." When this story hit, Twitter fans went into a frenzy. Some defended Clark. She's protecting her body. She's got a long career ahead. Others were furious. You don't abandon your team like that. Injured or not, you stay present. Hashtags started trending. Hashtag Clark walkout. Hashtag Fever meltdown. Hashtag leadership questioned. And then came the video. A blurry, shaky clip posted by someone claiming to work in Gambridge Fieldhouse. The video showed Clark backstage, still in her warm-ups, in what looked like a heated conversation with assistant coach Jessica Davenport. No audio, but the body language said plenty. Clark pointed at the court, then at herself, then threw her hands up and turned away. Davenport stood still, arms crossed. Her expression unreadable. The caption, "This ain't no injury." Within minutes, the video had over 2 million views. NBA players chimed in. Media personalities debated on live streams. Some even suggested the Fever might need to sit Clark for a few games, not because of injury, but to protect the team dynamic. The locker room feels divided, one analyst said, and that can tear a season apart. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark remained silent. She didn't post, didn't clarify, didn't deny. And for many fans, that silence was louder than any press release could have been. The next morning, the Fever arrived at their training facility under a cloud of cameras and microphones. Reporters waited outside, hoping for a glimpse, a comment, anything. Aaliyah Boston walked in with her hoodie up and her shoulder wrapped. Mitchell ignored the press entirely. When a reporter asked if the team would bounce back, she muttered, "Ask the people who didn't show up." Clark arrived last. She stepped out of a black SUV, her eyes hidden behind large sunglasses, her expression unreadable. She didn't speak, didn't wave, just walked through the doors without acknowledging a single question. And that image, that cold, distant arrival, became the new face of the franchise. Inside, things weren't any better. A team meeting was held behind closed doors. Sources later leaked that it was tense, emotional, and not productive. Players reportedly voiced their frustrations. One source claimed Boston said, "We can't win if we're not on the same page," while another alleged that Mitchell called out the coaching staff for choosing silence over answers. No one mentioned Clark by name. They didn't have to buy that afternoon. The Fever released an official statement. "We stand united as a team and will address internal matters privately." Caitlin Clark is continuing to receive medical evaluation for precautionary reasons. But fans weren't buying it anymore. The drama had spilled too far out of bounds to be contained. ESPN dedicated an entire segment to the Fever fracture. Former WNBA stars debated Clark's future. One analyst said she's a generational talent, but even legends need to learn how to lead. Another added, rookies don't get a pass on accountability. Even Connecticut Sun players were asked about it in post-game interviews. Tina Charles kept it professional. "We focus on us," she said. "What happens in Indiana is their business." But a smirk crept across her face before she turned away. Fans caught it. GIFs were made. And just like that, even silence became content. But the most unexpected twist came late that evening. A deleted Instagram story began circulating. Allegedly posted and then quickly removed from an account linked to Clark's inner circle. The post showed a dimly lit room, a table with 3 Fever jerseys laid out, and a caption that read, "Sometimes the biggest battles aren't on the court." Was it real? No one could confirm. But once again, it didn't matter. The speculation was too juicy, too dramatic to resist. Fans began piecing together theories, timelines, and possible betrayals like a true crime investigation. And through all of it, one truth remained. The Fever lost the game, but the real story was just catching fire. From locker room division to national scrutiny, from fan loyalty being tested to rivals smelling blood. The storm that started with a simple absence had grown into a full-blown media explosion. And as more eyes turned toward Indiana's next matchup, one question echoed across every headline, every comment thread, and every late-night sports desk. What happens now? As the Fever tried to regroup in the days that followed, the fallout from the July 19th game only continued to escalate. Practice sessions felt more like damage control than preparation. Media requests were being denied left and right, and internally, the coaching staff seemed divided on how to move forward. Whispers circulated that some players wanted Caitlin Clark benched indefinitely, not because of her injury, but because they felt betrayed by how she handled the situation. During one particularly tense practice, Mitchell reportedly stopped mid-drill, and asked out loud, what's the point of working this hard if it's going to be a one-woman show when she gets back? The room fell silent. No one responded, but that single comment echoed through the entire organization behind the scenes. Sources claimed that assistant coach Jessica Davenport and head coach Christy Sides were no longer aligned. Davenport was advocating for clear communication and accountability. Sides, on the other hand, reportedly believed the team needed to publicly support Clark to protect the franchise image. This difference in philosophy created a growing crack in the coaching foundation, one that many feared would widen as pressure mounted. Meanwhile, Clark still hadn't spoken publicly. Not a post, not an interview, not even a like or comment on social media. Her silence had taken on a life of its own. Some interpreted it as guilt. Others thought it was a strategic way to let the chaos fizzle out without fueling the flames. But on July 21st, everything changed. The Fever announced that Clark would address the media for the first time since the game in a closed-door press availability. No live stream, no public broadcast, just a controlled setting with a select group of reporters. The internet exploded. Hashtags reignited. Sports networks paused regular programming just to talk about what she might say. When Clark finally stepped into that room wearing a plain gray hoodie and her hair pulled back, the air felt like it had been sucked out of the building. She sat down, adjusted the mic, and looked out at the reporters like someone who'd aged 10 years in 2 days. First of all, she began, I want to be clear that I love my team, and I never wanted anything I did to make them feel otherwise. The room was silent. She continued, I didn't play in that game because of physical strain. I've been pushing myself hard, and my body needed rest. But I understand how the timing, the optics, and the lack of communication made it seem like I abandoned them. That wasn't my intention. Her voice cracked slightly. I should have spoken up sooner. To them, to you, to the fans, that's on me. The statement was calm, carefully crafted, and seemed to hit all the right notes. But behind the scenes, many weren't convinced it came from the heart. Some believed it was written by PR professionals, trying to salvage her image. Others felt it didn't go far enough. Later that evening, an anonymous source from within the Fever organization told a local outlet that Clark's return wasn't guaranteed. There are conversations happening about her role, the source said. About whether it's sustainable to keep building around her if the locker room isn't united. That one quote set off a firestorm. Was Indiana Fever just months into Caitlin Clark's rookie season already considering reshuffling their future around her? Sports analysts debated it fiercely. Fans argued on forums. One fan tweeted, "We waited years to get a star like her, and now we're about to blow it all up." Another replied, "You can't build around someone the team doesn't trust." Connecticut Sun players, meanwhile, were thriving in the media spotlight. Carrington did a podcast appearance where she joked, "We didn't just win the game, we lit the match." The host laughed, calling her the petty queen of the W. Fans loved it. Memes followed. Some even dubbed the Sun the agents of chaos. As the Fever prepared for their next game, internal tensions hadn't cooled. Reports indicated that certain veteran players requested private meetings with management. Others allegedly considered asking for trades if the situation remained unresolved. One insider put it bluntly, the Fever either need to fully support Clark or fully rebuild. There's no in between. And then came the most shocking development yet. On July 23rd, 1BE Commissioner Kathy Engelbert released a brief but pointed statement. Player welfare and team cohesion are top priorities. We are monitoring the situation in Indiana closely and will support any steps needed to preserve the integrity of the game. The league was watching now, and that added pressure threatened to push everything over the edge by the next practice. Clark finally joined her teammates again. It wasn't a warm reunion. Players stayed focused, avoided eye contact, and kept conversations minimal. Mitchell didn't even acknowledge her. Boston gave her a curt nod. The energy was thick with tension. During a water break, Clark reportedly tried to speak privately with Cunningham. Few words were exchanged, and witnesses said Cunningham turned and walked away without responding. It was clear that trust wasn't just broken, it had shattered. As the Fever took the court for their July 24th matchup, all eyes were on the bench. Would Clark suit up? Would she even be active? She was there in uniform, but she didn't start. Fans gasped. Announcers speculated. One even said maybe this is a message being sent from the coaching staff. Midway through the second quarter, Clark was subbed in, and when she stepped onto the court, the entire arena seemed to hold its breath. Some fans cheered, others stayed silent. Even her first possession was met with anxious energy. She dribbled, passed, and kept her head down, and then, out of nowhere, she hit a deep three. The crowd erupted. Her teammate stood up. And for a moment, just a split second, it felt like maybe the drama had taken a pause. But the reality was much deeper. Internally, nothing had been resolved. Trust wasn't restored in one shot. Nor could one game undo the emotional whiplash of the past few days. But the Fever were now forced to move forward, whether together or apart. And that's where the real story begins. Because sometimes it's not about who scores the most. It's about who stays when the spotlight fades. Who stands up when the team breaks down. And who you become when the entire world is watching. And for Caitlin Clark, the Fever, and everyone watching, that chapter was just getting started as the dust settles from one of the most chaotic weeks in the one bus season. One thing is clear. Nothing will ever be the same for the Indiana Fever. What started as a routine matchup turned into a firestorm of speculation, betrayal, silence, and pressure. Caitlin Clark's absence didn't just change the scoreboard. It shifted the emotional center of an entire franchise. Fans are still divided. Some believe Caitlin is being unfairly scapegoated, a rookie under immense pressure trying to do her best. Others say her silence and decisions sparked a domino effect that exposed deeper fractures in the locker room. And while Connecticut Sun continues to ride the high of their explosive win, the Fever are stuck in recovery mode, emotionally and strategically. And the real question now, is this the beginning of a comeback story or the unraveling of a once promising era? Will Caitlin Clark rise from the drama and reclaim her place as the face of the franchise? Will her teammates find a way to trust again? Or is a major shakeup coming? Coaches, rosters, even leadership? The truth is, this story is far from over. Because in professional sports, it's not just the points that matter. It's the chemistry, the unity, the belief. And right now, the Fever are running low on all three. But what do you think? Is this just a rookie misstep or something deeper? Will the Fever bounce back? Or has the damage already been done? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you stand on the drama. And don't forget to like this video if you want more raw, unfiltered sports commentary just like this. Subscribe now because the next chapter is coming fast. And trust us, you won't want to miss what happens next.